There are very few times in life that you have the distinct pleasure of speaking with a person whose actions and leadership still have impact on how we live today. This afternoon, we have that opportunity. Through incredible courage and undying dedication, Major General Joe McNeil and 3 of his closest friends changed the course of history. Through my research on the Greensboro Four, I found some particular points that were absolutely fascinating to me. As the 4 men first sat down at the table, they caught a lot of questions from the staff, and then the staff actually sent out an African-American chef that couldn't eat at the counter. And when the African-American chef came out, she said, "It's people like you who make our race look bad." I found that to be absolutely fascinating. On February 4th, the president of the Greensboro Women's College supported the sit-ins and told her students to do what their hearts told them to do. After this statement, a lot of the African-American women at that college went down and supported Joe and the Greensboro Four. What I also found fascinating was a lot of the white women went down. A lot of the white women took over the seats that the white men were sitting in protest of the Greensboro Four. The white women, when asked, "What do you want and what can we serve you?" they responded, "We believe they were here first. We're going to sit here until you serve them." What's fascinating is in July of 1963, Joe McNeil raised his right hand and pledged to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He continued on active duty until 1969, then moved to the reserves, where he would serve while maintaining a civilian job for 33 more years. In 2002, Joe retired from his role with the Federal Aviation Administration after 15 years of service. I'm deeply humbled and honored to introduce you to Joe McNeil. I'm proud to have worn the same uniform and fought for the rights that Joe helped establish. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Major General Joe McNeil.
Thank you, Brian, for that beautiful introduction. Joe, welcome. Welcome back to Stern.
Thank you, Dolly.
You're a good friend to be here with our students again. What were the thoughts and emotions that led you to do what you did, and what did it feel like?
At that time in America's life in the 60s, racial segregation, or Jim Crow, was pervasive. It looked at your first thing in the morning until you went to sleep at night. It was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. And you'd keep getting signs that suggest that you're not a full citizen, you're a second-class citizen. Instances or situations like colored water fountains, or segregated water, or segregated restrooms. All these things would drive or compel a youngster like me that says, enough is enough. We've talked about taking action for weeks, and still we hadn't done anything. And so I guess the catalyst was anger, because not only were we not doing anything at the time, nobody else was. There was this lull in the civil rights evolution that just compelled us all to, let's get out there and do it. We don't need to ask for permission. As a matter of fact, if we do, we'll probably kill it right away. So it was everywhere. The night of the first sit-in, I called my mother, who lived in New York at the time. And I said, Mom, I got some interesting news for you. I might be going to jail. And she said, what? Why would you be doing that? And I explained to her that I'd pretty much had it up to whatever, dealing with this racial segregation, and I couldn't do it anymore. And all I was doing was what they taught me as parents, to sacrifice and to take on things that may be difficult, but if they're worthwhile, by all means take them on. So after about 45 minutes of conversation, she consented to be supportive, and that helped a lot. Throughout this, what turned out to be a movement, a student movement, maybe the largest student movement in our country. But as we became more involved and made more and more friends, we found that we could change hearts. The very first day that we were participating in the sit-in, there's an interesting story about an elderly white woman who was sitting there at the Woolworths store watching events as they unfolded, watching the arrival of the policeman who was menacing to the people around, saying things like, look at this mess. You think these boys are going to sit here all day? But all these sidebar conversations were going on. And there was an elderly white woman. She had to be in her 80s. She had watched from the time we chose to sit down and stayed there almost until the end. But she felt that she needed to say something. So she approached Frank McCain and I, who were sitting at the lunch counter, and said, boys, I'm disappointed with you. And Frank McCain said, ma'am, why would you be disappointed in me? You don't know me. And that little woman said, I'm disappointed because it took so long for you boys to do what you were doing. And that was like a shot of adrenaline. That was our first friendship that we earned, merited, because of the way we carried ourselves. We were able to influence, going back to the first day of the sit-ins.
Yeah. So you have this anger that leads to this courage, and were you the guy, though, growing up in high school that people thought was going to be the angry, bold rebel?
Probably not.
Yeah.
We grow into these roles in life. It doesn't happen at once. If you're fortunate, you'll have good teachers and professors who will share wisdom with you. And these good teachers will often help you form the basis of a lifetime of values, values like integrity, that would force you to ask the question, how long are you going to be a silent observer sitting on the sideline waiting for somebody else to do something? When are you going to get off your duff and take it on yourself? Evaluate the risks. For God's sake, just don't be a wallflower waiting for somebody else to do something. But I would have said that I was a pretty serious student in high school. I was studying philosophy, and I came across things like Thoreau, Walden's Pond, and all those types of things. And I came across ideas like Gandhi and nonviolence and how that could change lives. And this education helped me become who I eventually became, a strong person, willing to take risks. What surprised me is taking risks. Little did we know that we would be doing something that would influence thousands of students, not just in North Carolina, but throughout the country. And people who were taking all types of measures to make sure we succeeded, economic boycotts. This was a major movement. And we believed in the Constitution. We believed in the concept of America for all. None of this separate but equal. We found that intolerable. And so, years of exposure to double standards was the ultimate thing that broke, the ultimate straw that broke the camel's back.
So how do you balance this, the philosophy around nonviolence, which some wholeheartedly believe in and others don't, but it was the philosophy you and the others committed to, with the feelings of anger? You said what gave you the courage was the anger, and yet at the same time, you're doing it with a commitment to nonviolence. How do we reconcile those two?
I would not say that the four of us were strict, forever nonviolent. Nonviolence was a very difficult thing to do, to be nonviolent. Have somebody come up to you with a cigarette and ground it in your clothing, or to take a cup of coffee and throw it all over you. Nonviolence was very, very difficult. Up until that time, I got exposed to nonviolence. I strongly believed in self-defense. And you pick on me at the wrong day, I'll respond in kind. But I learned, we all had to learn to be nonviolent. We didn't have training on how to be nonviolent initially. All that came later. We just had commitment, and we knew that that was the way to go. So all these thousands of students, encouraged by the participation of others, other students in 54 southern cities. Imagine that. We had no idea that what we were doing would impact so many lives.
So, so yes, it's spread amongst students and it's spread from state to state and campus to campus. But at the same time, it was in the end a small fraction of the total population that got involved. How did you think about the fact that some people would say they were going to show up and didn't? Some people would say they cared but weren't part of the movement. How did you think about who got involved and who didn't, and how to manage your energy and your emotion around that?
Well, we had great energy around that concept. I used to really get ticked off at some of my colleagues who I will classify as silent observers. They were never going to participate. And they said they'd come, but they didn't come. So McCain used to say, if you're going to take actions that might be revolutionary in nature, you don't want to ask permission. Just do it. And so we did it based on, to a large degree, the morality we had developed all over our years as we grew and matured.
I've heard you talk about walking through campus and seeing an athlete from your college under the tree with his girl while you're off to risk your life on his behalf.
Yes.
How did you process that?
With great difficulty. mean, you know that you need to do the right thing because it's your personal choice. Nobody's forcing you to do this thing. But imagine, if you would, what I had to do the first day. First day, 4 of us sat down, went back to campus, and we sought out campus leaders. And 4 freshmen went up to these campus leaders and said, "We want your help. Guess what we're doing? It would be very good if you could come down and join us tomorrow." And some said yeah, and some said no. But we asked for help. And often that help wasn't forthcoming. But these were personal commitments. I would have to go up and say, "Listen, Joe Bag of Donuts student XYZ, I need your help. I can't pay you money because we're not doing what we're doing because of money. I can't guarantee you that you won't get knocked upside your head and endure physical damage and harm. You might even lose your life." That had been done before in the civil rights movement. So all these risks, you had to explain them not only to the students, but often to the parents. And so it was very helpful to have everybody on board, to have as many people as you can, but to explain and be very honest about the risk. And to have a shared vision. What was unique about what we were doing is so many people in our country believed in it. People from diverse backgrounds, religious backgrounds, Baptists, Catholics, Sikhs, Jews, people from all types of backgrounds found the energy to mobilize. And this shared vision made it possible for these sit-ins to succeed, despite the fact that there were risks involved. And not just a 1 or 2 times event, but every day to come back for 3, 4, 5 months, day after day, and to go up against people who hated your guts, the Ku Klux Klan and the KKK and all these elements of hatred. We're there to provoke you and to cause you to hurt your movement.
How did you think about the employees of the restaurant, of Woolworths, the chef, there were the waiters and waitresses? How did you think about the situation they were in and what their options were?
I had a deep sense of empathy. We knew that a lot of people depended on those jobs at Woolworths to support their families. And the fact that they were under economic pressure, we weren't blind to that fact that we were asking a lot of them. So when they spoke out, what seeming like it was against us, we knew they weren't really speaking for themselves. At least that's the way we felt about it.
And you got to, years later, I saw once in a television program that you met Mr. Curly Harris years later.
Oh, Curly Harris. When I look at Brian, I'm reminded of him.
With the haircut, the haircut.
Curly Harris, a couple of years after the sit-ins were over and for the time being, at a forum, said, "If you boys had just sat down and talked to me, I would have eventually have come around to your way of thinking." And we said, "Right." Thank you for your counsel.
Interesting.
But it was interesting, the interplay between adults and students. risk takers and risk averters. There were threats of being dismissed from college. You know, after your parents and others have spent all this money for you to go to college, I often wonder, what would have happened if that first day they had just served us?
It's like,
Thank you very much. But life's funny.
is the relationship between the four of you, and particularly you and Mr. McCain, who I know remained close until his recent passing, what was the role that smaller partnership played in the larger movement?
Frank McCain was a hulk of a man, huge in stature, big in heart. He was the type of person that if you're going to go to war, you want Frank McCain at your 6 o'clock position, because he would provide cover for you in friendship and strength, and that strength fed upon itself. So I'll always regard Frank McCain as my hero, and I felt that from the time we were youngsters.
One of the interesting things, and I'm wondering how intentional it was between you and Mr. McCain, that the Greensboro Four has been known as the Greensboro Four for decades, not as the Joe McNeil or the Frank McCain and team. How did that come to be, that name and the unity around it as opposed to the single hero tied to it?
I think that was very, very important. When observing something like a movement, one of the key factors is the fact that each environment, each city, each community is different. And movements, things like movements, have a better chance of succeeding if there's local influence. And so we needed to figure out ways to be supportive of each other, because the professors weren't cutting us any slack. They were treating us like any other student. We had homework and exams, and professors would tell you out front that you're getting no special privileges because you're participating in something that we all believe in and something that would ultimately save our butts.
Interesting. In a moment, I'm going to open up these two mics for questions, so start in just a moment. Be ready to jump up at a mic. What do you view as the costs to you of the decision you made as a young adult? I mean, now you have a lifetime of adulthood that's transpired.
My involvement in the sit-ins was redemptive. I mean, I think it saved me and made me 10 times stronger than I would have been had I not participated. It taught me things like integrity, to believe in something, believe in the dignity of man. These were very abstract ideas, but they require excellence on our part. If we're going to have sit-ins, we're going to do it right. We're going to hang in there and make sure that it gets done right. And then lastly, the thoughts of things, concepts like service. Service before self, because you're not gaining anything. You're not gaining money. You weren't doing it because you want to establish a reputation. You're doing it because you think it's the right thing to do. No special rewards. But it was not just redemptive for the people who participated in this activity around us. It was the community at large. Dr. King would have observed what we were doing was saving us from us, because we were going down this path of inhumanity at a rapid pace.
Yeah, interesting. Were there things you wish you had known then that are clear to you now?
Oh boy. I think we did it right. I mean, if I had to do it again, I probably would have done it the same way, except I think I would have been more verbal in attacking the, quote, silent observers, and trying to explain to them why we needed them. Not in an adversarial mode, but in a helpful mode, to make them, or give them the opportunity to be better human beings too.
Interesting. Thank you. Let's bring everyone else into the discussion. We've got a mic here and a mic there.
Hi. Thank you so much. This has been so inspiring. My question for you, you mentioned Frank McCain being a hero. Can you tell us about some of your other heroes and what the qualities were that really resonated with you?
Oh, my ultimate heroes, the folks I look to as role models, are my parents. You don't have to look very far. In most instances, domestic workers determined that their son's generation will go on to college, succeed, and perhaps have a better chance of getting a good job and raising a family. So my parents played a vital role. In addition to my parents, we had what was called an extended family. If you saw your neighbor's kid misbehaving, you would go up and talk to that kid and correct him. And his parents or her parents would be supportive of you. We all kind of looked after each other, so coming up in that type of environment was important.
Thank you. Hey, Julie.
Hi, I have a question about how your activism would look different if you were young today. Because I think a lot of the forces that you were fighting against and protesting against were really blatant and out in the open. People wouldn't let you sit at the lunch counter. You said they were throwing coffee on your shirt. And when you think of inequalities today, a lot of them tend to be things that aren't as obvious. And so there's an opportunity for people to often kind of come in and say, and try to pretend that they don't exist, and so you have to fight that perception too. So just wondering, if you were 19 in 2016, what would you be doing, and how would that look different from what you did back in 1960?
It wouldn't be terribly different. I mean, we're hopefully a little smarter today. Things like today, discrimination is different in the sense that what we were doing was winning hearts and souls as well as mind. We've been able to enact laws that make Jim Crow and racial separation, let that take place. But we need to change hearts and minds. And that's where the struggle is. It's an environment where there are many issues that sometimes get lost. For example, mass incarceration. The economic impact often is something that extends beyond our day-to-day lives. Police reform or law enforcement reform. We all need to figure out ways to make that go better. So I'm encouraged when I see efforts at diversity and groups trying to figure out ways where we can all help each other become better human beings.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, General, for coming to speak to us. So I was just wondering if you did anything, if you thought of any way to integrate publicity into what you were doing planning to do at Woolworth, kind of from the beginning, because obviously there wasn't publicity, no one would ever know, and you could be just shunted away into a jail, and nothing would ever have come of this.
Good observation. Publicity was vital. From day one, a friend of the movement, we stopped and shared our thoughts with him that we were going to go down and sit in. And he said, well, I'll call the press. And he placed the call that went sort of like, hey, there are 4 black kids sitting at a lunch counter saying they're not going to leave until they're served. And so that photo that was taken went around the world. And we certainly didn't expect that to happen initially. But the press was, it was like the Vietnam era when we were at war. You sit down at the TV screen and watch what's going on in the world around you, you're probably more likely to act. Thank you.
Hey, sir. First, it's an honor to meet you. And I'm a veteran myself, so I understand that sort of that need to serve. But I think we've had very different experiences, maybe that shaped kind of our decisions for going to the service. And I'm curious what informed your decision to want to join the military after the experiences you had.
Well, we had something called the draft.
Drafted.
And I always figured that it would be better if I made the decision of which branch of service to go into. Since I was going to go anyway, it was inevitable. So I opted to go into the aviation business because there were no black pilots in my neighborhood. I figured that would be something good to participate in. We'd heard of things like the Tuskegee Airmen, who performed heroic feats during World War II, 250 combat missions, 47 kills. But this appealed to me. And there were no other job opportunities for the most part. So the service was a viable option, and one that I won't regret. It taught me a lot about life and about living. And for many people, it gave them a second chance to get their act together.
You mentioned the Tuskegee Airmen. I've had the privilege of meeting one of them. How did that influence your choice in which branch? And also, did your actions in 1960 impact anything that happened in the military after you commissioned? And can you tell us who commissioned you?
Oh. 2 people participated in my commissioning. My commissioning as a second lieutenant and my graduation from college occurred at the same time. One of the persons who helped pin me on was my father, but the other was the not so famous at the time civil rights leader Jesse Jackson. We all went to the same college, and he lived 2 doors down from me in the dormitory. So there was fertile activity in terms of cerebral things that we were going to protest. But the military is very interesting. It was the first time in life often for blacks, whites, or somebody who's different, the first time that you had a chance to trust each other when your lives depended on it. You didn't have much to try to get away from.
Yeah.
Can you tell the group about what you told me with regards to the female commander that you had in Africa?
Oh, yeah. Cathy Morton. She's an airline pilot for FedEx now. When I went for small arms training, that's learning how to shoot a pistol, and I went to the range, I would always want to sit or stand next to Cathy Luke, because I knew that her score was going to be so high that if I needed a couple of holes in my target, Cathy Luke, would you consider, But we had an interesting trip down to Africa. It was Cathy's first trip out of the country, per se. And the first place we landed was Sudan. And somebody from the embassy staff was supposed to meet us there. They didn't show up. So here we are with nothing but long-range radio. We got on the phone and called Germany and said, help. Get us out of here. If you don't come within the next 10 minutes, we're leaving. But what was interesting about Cathy Luke and how she handled these situations, she went into environments where women were treated differently. People in those environments could not accept the fact that women could be in command. And that's the way we built our system. It didn't all happen at once, but gradually and sometimes very forcefully it happened. The armed forces, while there's still efforts to deal with combat, by and large it's given us good opportunities.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in while others are developing their questions. Joe, how do you, I don't know if every generation says this, but it's hard not to look around the world right now and see lots of things that are frightening and upsetting, and one could become bitter or lose hope. My sense is that you've retained your sense of hope and faith. How do you do that?
Well, before the sit-ins, I was not particularly a very religious guy. But I learned something called faith. After Ku Klux Klan and all these guys threatened to do me in, I needed to have faith in order to survive. Faith that if somebody knocked me to the ground with my picket sign, that somebody else, a comrade, would come along, pick up my picket sign, and carry on. That was some fundamental good teaching. And as my wife would say, believe in the dignity of man. Mankind we're all God's children. And we need to treat each other with human dignity so that you and I can live peacefully and grow. Don't be afraid to talk about concepts like that. We sometimes shortchange ourselves in our ability to change, to bring about change. I still marvel at the thought that one person by himself could never have started to sit in. Two persons, the odds go up, but you're still against. Four, you're getting to the point where you may be able to get four people to agree on something. But thousands, sometimes we're amazed at ourselves. What might seem to be small things in life can have a tremendous impact later on that we don't know when we undertake it.
Thank you. Mike.
Hi. Thank you for coming. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of like the night before you actually went and the nights between. And it just seems to me that I know I suspect if I were in that situation, I'd probably have some doubts about maybe not showing up the next day, maybe giving up, and what that was like.
Yeah. That second day, I think we had, maybe 12 or 14 students who participated. And they went through the drill about risk. And you can make a very good case for not doing anything because of the risk of just too steep. But But somebody someplace along the system taught us how to respect humanity, and if you see indignity or injustice taking place, like King would say, don't just stand there and do something about it.
Why, of the risks you took, why did you choose Woolworths and the lunch counter?
Oh, great question, Professor.
Thank you, General.
Woolworths at the time was a national chain, just like McDonald's. Every community had its Woolworths. And when I mentioned the name McDonald's, would you believe that McDonald's also participated in racial segregation? That if you wanted a burger, you had to go around to the back of the store, and they had a special window where they served people of color. But Woolworths was chosen because it's a national company. You could go to Woolworths in San Francisco, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Butte, Montana, Harlem, USA, Brooklyn, USA. It was everywhere. And if you're going to pick a target, our hope is that these folks would see the merit in what we were trying to do and do the right thing without picket signs and lengthy negotiations. But it didn't happen naturally. It needed something to stoke it, to cause it to grow.
Interesting. Thank you. We'll take last two questions.
Hi, thank you for being here. My question, I was wondering actually if you could talk a little bit more about your upbringing. You mentioned your parents were heroes of yours, and I was wondering if there are particular instances of times that you saw them doing something particularly inspiring or heroic to you that really meant something, anything that you can sort of point to in your upbringing that really sort of inspired what you did.
Well, I'd say my parents believed in the work ethic. My dad always had 2 jobs, and when he expired, I discovered that he had $400,000 or $500,000 that he squirreled away. But he believed in the work ethic, and I was taught that work ethic. And throughout most of my life, I've had 2 jobs. And now with 5 kids, that's an interesting challenge.
Thank you.
At what point did you realize that your efforts in Greensboro had been successful, and how did that feel?
We didn't realize it at the time. Seldom do you know the impact of things that you do, how they impact others. And we were like that. We were hopeful to bring about change. We believed in change. We believed in the Constitution. We believed that God was on our side, even if you weren't on God's side. But we believed in the dignity of man. And in the end, that's the truth that prevailed. And I really want to thank Professor Chugh, Brian, all the staff at Stern for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. I appreciate your interest, and I'm thankful to you.
We are thankful to you, General McNeil. Thank you. I'll invite Brian up.
General McNeil, at Stern, we talk a lot about the combination of IQ and EQ, emotional intelligence, just as much as just regular intelligence. And I don't think we had a greater lesson than what you taught us here today. You also spoke about what seems small can have a tremendous impact, and that was very impactful for me. And that we've come a long way, and we have to. You spoke a lot about hearts and minds, but we're not done yet. We still have some ways to go, and that's on us in this room to help shape the future. And then most importantly, I think you said we need to treat each other with dignity, and that's what I'm going to take away from here. Please, round of applause for Joe.